I was the sole breadwinner in my family, but that turned me into an invisible man. My marriage didn't end with fiery arguments or betrayal, but with a far more brutal truth. I was stripped of my entire self-worth and my voice becoming a mindless ATM in the very home I'd poured my sweat and blood into building. The greatest pain is when your sacrifices are trivialized and you're reduced to just a tool, an anonymous, forgotten entity. I once thought as long as I provided enough money, everything would be fine. I was wrong. That mistake transformed me from a responsible husband into a walking wallet, losing both respect and my human value. This isn't a complaint. It's the heartfelt cry of a man who lost everything only to find himself again. I'm Ryan, and today I'm going to tell you about my marriage to Emily, a story that exposed the bitter secret of inequality and the cost of silent sacrifice. If unrecognized, it will crush you, turning you into a soulless shadow in your own life. I hope you don't have to go through what I did. Listen to my story. A story about love, financial responsibility, and the thin line between sacrifice and losing yourself. Perhaps it will help you examine your own relationships to understand that sometimes overwhelming sacrifice that goes unacknowledged and imbalances in power and voice can become unhealable cracks. And sometimes letting go is the only way to reclaim your self-respect and your rightful role. I met Emily on a rainy afternoon at a small coffee shop near the university campus where I was studying computer science and she was an education student. Emily had a radiant smile and the warm eyes of a future kindergarten teacher. She had a free spirit, loved art, and always saw life through rose-tinted glasses. I was more practical, more logical, drawn to her innocence and optimism. After 3 years of dating filled with beautiful memories, from dates under the glittering Seattle city lights to weekend getaways at Olympic National Park, we got married. I worked as a software engineer at a software design company in downtown Seattle. My job was quite busy, but the income was stable. Emily worked part-time as a preschool teacher. She loved children and always dreamed of a small family full of laughter. Right from the start, we had an unspoken agreement which gradually became a clear consensus. I would be primarily responsible for finances so she could fully dedicate herself to family and children when we had them. Emily wanted to spend the early years at home with our child, personally caring for and raising them. I fully supported this. I thought it was a great division of labor. I would handle the financial burden and she would build our home, taking care of our small family. A perfect arrangement, seemingly meticulously planned for a happy future. However, looking back at those early days, perhaps there were signs I overlooked, signs of a mismatch in financial mindset and expectations. Even before we had children, Emily tended to shop on impulse rather than planning. She often bought beautiful home decor items, new dresses just because they were on sale, or unexpected small gifts for friends without much concern for the overall budget. I was usually the one to remind her about the budget, and she would just laugh it off, waving her hand carelessly. "Oh, come on, honey, it's not often. Money is meant to be spent. You're overthinking it." I assumed it was a difference in personality, a necessary balance. I was the careful one, she was the generous one. I accepted it, thinking this small difference wouldn't greatly affect our shared life. Or when we discussed future savings plans for buying a bigger house or for our children's education later, she often seemed less interested, saying, "I know you'll take care of it. I trust you. You're good at making money." I misunderstood that as absolute trust in my abilities rather than an avoidance of shared financial responsibility, a complete delegation. I believed that as long as I earned enough money, everything would be fine. To fulfill that promise, I worked frantically. I took extra shifts, accepted additional freelance programming projects in the evenings and on weekends. Often I sat in front of the computer screen until late at night, sometimes until dawn, with tired eyes and an aching back. I had to drink coffee constantly to stay awake, sometimes feeling dizzy and exhausted, but I kept pushing myself. I drastically cut down on all personal expenses, from cheap office lunches, after-work outings with friends, to buying new clothes or tech gadgets that a software engineer like me desperately needed to improve work efficiency. I told myself, everything is worth it for my family, for Emily and Noah. Every month I paid for all our housing, car installments, health insurance and life insurance for the whole family, living expenses from electricity, water, and internet, to groceries, and even Emily's hobbies like yoga classes, art courses she loved, or coffee outings with friends. I spared nothing for her, for our child, for this home. I thought that was what a man should do, a responsible husband. I believed that this sacrifice was worthwhile, a solid foundation for a happy family. I thought I was doing right, fulfilling my role as the breadwinner well. But I didn't know I was slowly being turned into an invisible money printing machine, an unlimited resource that needed no replenishment or recognition. That was the beginning of a tragedy. I didn't see a truth that would gradually drown all my beliefs and hopes, turning me into something meaningless in my own life. Our lives changed dramatically when our first child, Noah, was born. Noah's cries brought boundless joy, but they also came with immense responsibilities I had never imagined. Emily quit her job after giving birth just as planned. I didn't object at all. I told her confidently and firmly, "I'll handle everything. You just focus on taking care of our child." And I lived up to my word even beyond that. I worked harder than ever, doubling my overtime hours, taking on demanding projects with tight deadlines and high requirements just to ensure a steady flow of money into our account, enough to cover everything. Those projects often required me to work late, sometimes until the next morning, to meet deadlines, and the pressure from my boss and colleagues grew, causing me to constantly battle insomnia and stress. The only thing was, the harder I tried, the more she took it for granted. This concept of taking it for granted was like a submerged iceberg, growing larger and threatening to sink our marriage, dragging my self-respect along with it. I remember trying to communicate about finances because it was the biggest burden I was carrying, and I wanted us to manage it effectively and transparently together. I suggested we create a monthly budget together just so we could have a clearer picture of our cash flow, to get an overview of income and expenses, and to prepare for big future expenses like Noah's tuition or buying a larger house. She immediately reacted sharply, her tone full of offense, as if I was insulting her. "Are you trying to control me? Ryan, don't you trust me? I'm the one at home managing expenses. I know what to do. You just go to work and earn money. I can handle these things. Or are you afraid I'll spend all your money? Are you going to nickel and dime your wife and child?" She spoke with a cold face, her eyes full of contempt, as if I was interfering in an area that didn't belong to me. A terrifying lack of respect. Those words made me feel like I was a nosy, petty person, distrusting my wife, a terrible husband. I asked about large purchases like a new sofa for the living room or a smart refrigerator with a touchscreen, items worth thousands of dollars that she bought without ever asking my opinion. I just wanted to ensure they were within our financial means and truly necessary at this stage. She glared at me, her eyes cold, full of dissatisfaction. "Are you going to quibble over every penny? Do you know how hard I worked to find the best items for this house? I spent hours searching, comparing prices, reading reviews. Do you spend time doing those things? Do you know I have to stay up at night taking care of our child, and during the day I have to manage 100 household chores, and you call yourself a husband? Do you earn money just so I have to worry about every refrigerator, every sofa?" Each time I was met with a cold splash of water, labeled as terrible, as stingy. A husband who didn't care about his wife and child, someone who only knew how to make money but not enjoy it. I could only bow my head in silence, accepting those accusations, because I didn't want to cause more arguments, didn't want to make the family atmosphere more tense. The breaking point was when I suggested combining our bank accounts so we could track and manage our finances more transparently, making big decisions together. It's a common idea for couples in the US to build careers and families together, share responsibility, and work towards a common goal. She burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably, her voice full of lament. "You don't trust me anymore. You want to keep your money separate, don't you? You've changed. You don't love me like you used to. Or do you have other intentions? Are you planning to abandon me and our child?" Those words left me completely confused and heartbroken. I just wanted to know where the money I earned was going so I could plan better for our family's future, for Noah's education, for buying a bigger house, a more stable future. But every time I brought it up, I became the bad guy, a selfish husband, someone who didn't trust his wife, even someone with sinister intentions, betraying the family. The secret here was Emily's exclusive management of finances wasn't just about her spending. It was a form of soft power. She unconsciously held a tool for her to control and dictate everything in the family. Not letting me participate in managing the money stripped away my control and my voice in a core aspect of our family life. I became the provider without the right to direct an investor, without voting rights, someone who just followed orders. I still believed I was doing the right thing, contributing to my family. But Emily's actions slowly turned me into an outsider in my own financial matters, someone with no voice, no right to ask questions. The more money I made, the more invisible I felt, like a diligent worker bee with no say in its own hive, only knowing how to work and offer sweet nectar. As the months passed, I felt myself slowly losing my sense of self. I couldn't remember the last time Emily asked me if I was tired or if I was feeling stressed. My life revolved solely around work and earning money. I became a relentless work machine from early dawn until late at night. The pressure from work weighed heavier and heavier, deadlines piled up. Performance requirements constantly increased. Complex projects demanded high concentration. I had to face challenging software bugs that sometimes required me to stay up all night to fix, drinking coffee continuously to stay awake. Dizziness and exhaustion became constant companions. Every time I came home late because of overtime, a prolonged meeting, or a rushed project, she would just say with a tired face and a reproachful tone, without an ounce of sympathy, without even asking for a reason, "You're late again. I had to do everything by myself. Do you know how hard it is for me? Noah kept asking where Daddy was and why he wasn't home yet. He misses you." She never asked if I was hungry, if I was tired, or if work was going well, if I was facing any difficulties. The only thing she seemed to care about was my absence from home, not the underlying reason why I had to be absent, why I had to struggle out there. I understood that taking care of a child wasn't easy, especially when Emily had to be home alone with Noah all day. I sympathized with her. I tried to do all the housework when I got home, from cleaning and washing dishes to helping Emily feed Noah, bathe him, and read him bedtime stories. I never complained, never said I was tired or stressed, but why were all my efforts, all my silent sacrifices erased just because I didn't change a diaper at the right time or wasn't there to play with our child in the afternoon? The effort I put into earning money to support our entire family, to ensure a comfortable life for Noah, seemed to hold no value in her eyes, just a given. I suggested she go back to work when Noah was a little older, or at least find a part-time job to share the financial burden and also to connect with society outside, to find joy beyond childcare, away from the pressures of full-time motherhood. She immediately reacted fiercely, tears welling up her voice full of lament. "You're so selfish. You want to push me to work so I can't take care of our child anymore. Aren't you thinking of Noah? You only think about money. Don't you see I've sacrificed my career to be home with our child? Don't you appreciate that? What more do you want me to do?" Once again, I became the bad guy, someone who didn't care about his family, a heartless man, someone who only thought about money and wanted to shirk responsibility. Once the company faced difficulties and I had to announce that my salary for that month would be delayed a few days, or might even be slightly cut for the next few months due to the general economic downturn, I was very nervous telling Emily because I knew how she would react. Instead of sympathy or sharing the burden, she glared at me and said with a scornful, disappointed tone, "Is that what you call a husband? Can't you even provide for your own family? My friends' husbands are raking in money, buying luxury cars, beautiful houses, traveling everywhere, and you? Don't you know how much I expected from you? Don't you know the pressure I feel when my friends brag about their husbands? Your small-time companies can't compare to them." Those words were like a dagger plunged straight into my heart, making me feel useless, a failed man, someone incapable of being a husband, a father. I felt I was no longer the man of the house. I was just the one paying for that house, a walking wallet, nothing more. A tool without emotions, without its own value. I am a programmer. I am not a CEO or a CFO. I work hard, but my income has its limits. I constantly sought to improve my skills, learn new programming languages, take online courses to increase my salary and find better opportunities. I spent hours after work teaching myself the latest knowledge in the tech industry. But those efforts never seemed to be enough in Emily's eyes. She always compared me to her friends' husbands, those with higher incomes who could buy designer brands, travel luxuriously to paradise islands, or buy expensive cars. Those comparisons gnawed at my self-esteem, making me feel utterly useless, even though I had tried my best, even though I had poured out all my energy both physically and mentally. This was the second secret revealed. Emily had reduced me to a mere tool, an endless source of money that required no care or understanding. Her lack of recognition, insatiable expectations, and ceaseless reproaches stripped away not just my professional value, but my human worth. I was the only one earning money. Yet I was the only one without a voice, without the right to be tired, without the right to complain or share my burdens. I was just a walking wallet, nothing more. And the saddest part was that she never realized the devastation her words and actions were causing, never realized that she was single-handedly destroying the very foundation of her own family. The feeling of being turned into a wallet, an endless financial resource without the right to be a human being, grew within me. I stayed silent, not arguing, not explaining, because I knew every word I said would be turned into useless excuses and would ultimately only lead to endless arguments, confrontations, where I was always the loser. My silence was not agreement, but growing helplessness and despair. It was a choked cry for help, a plea to be heard that no one answered, a silent surrender. I remember once my old laptop, which had accompanied me through so many difficult projects, completely gave up. I had bought that machine back in college. It was old and constantly had problems, but I kept using it to save money for the family. Now I needed a new laptop for work because it was my only tool for earning money, the rice bowl for the whole family. I had researched a moderately configured laptop, sufficient for work, not too expensive, only about $1,000, a small amount compared to my income at the time. I had researched carefully, compared models, and chosen a machine that fit my budget and work needs. When I mentioned buying it to Emily, she reacted as if I was demanding something luxurious, unnecessary, and unacceptable waste of money. "It's always about you, Ryan. Do you ever think about me? I've wanted a new dishwasher for so long and you keep saying it's unnecessary. I've had to wash dishes by hand every day. My hands are all rough. Can't you see? I've had to do housework from morning till night. Do you know that? And you call yourself a husband? Do you earn money just so I have to think about every single refrigerator, every single sofa? A good man wouldn't let his wife struggle like that." She spoke with a bitter tone full of hurt and resentment, as if I were selfish, only thinking of myself. She even added scornfully, "You only think your job is important, but what about my housework, my childcare? Isn't it worth spending money on a dishwasher? A good man wouldn't let his wife struggle like that." But I realized I hadn't bought anything for myself in 2 years since Noah was born. All the money I earned from my main salary to freelance projects went into housing, car payments, insurance, living expenses, Noah's education, and all the things Emily bought for the house or for herself. I ate cheap lunches at work, wore old clothes, and gave up all personal hobbies, all gatherings with friends. I had given everything, all my strength, time, and youth, all for my family. Yet in Emily's eyes, I was never enough, someone who only thought of himself, a terrible husband. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I just wanted to be heard, to be recognized, to be understood that I also had needs, pressures, sacrifices. I just wanted Emily to see my silent efforts instead of just seeing what I hadn't done or what I hadn't provided enough of. I wanted her to understand that having to work late wasn't because I wanted to avoid my family, but because I wanted to ensure the best possible life for her and our child. But the more I stayed silent, the louder she became, the more confident she became in her power. In Emily's eyes, I was never enough. Even though I had given everything, even though I had poured out every last drop. She didn't see the nights I stayed up, the pressures from work, the worries about the future. She only saw that I wasn't meeting her expectations. Expectations she never clearly stated, but which were always evident in every reproach and every comparison to better and richer husbands. The greatest pain wasn't that she spent the money I earned, but the lack of respect, to the point where she completely disregarded my role as an individual with thoughts, feelings, needs, pressures, and my own limitations. I had become a symbol of unspoken sacrifice and unconditional dedication that received no recognition or understanding. I felt my energy draining, my spirit depleting, but no one noticed and no one cared. I asked myself, is this the life I want? How long can I continue living like this? Will I forever be this invisible shadow? The answer was always no. I couldn't live such a meaningless life. This was the third secret revealed. Emily's indifference wasn't just about her not asking how I was. It was her unconscious stripping away of my voice and power in the very home where I was the financial pillar. She turned me into a provider with no right to intervene, a responsible man with no voice. My silence, initially patience, gradually turned into a desperate cry for help, a plea for liberation from the burden of invisibility and disrespect. As the months passed, I lived in silence and extreme loneliness. I felt like a robot, waking up every day, going to work, making money, coming home, and repeating the cycle. I no longer found joy in my work, no longer found meaning in this marriage. I watched Noah grow up every day, and I feared that he would grow up with a father figure like me, a hardworking, good-earning man, but completely invisible, voiceless, disrespected, a man who had lost himself due to endless expectations and the indifference of others. I didn't want my son to think that was how a man should live, that their sacrifices would never be adequately repaid. I didn't want my child to learn that silent sacrifice meant being trampled upon, exploited, and scorned. One cold March evening in Seattle, after Emily was sound asleep and Noah was fast asleep in his crib, I sat alone in the dark, looking at the financial statement on my computer screen. Dozens of numbers danced before my eyes, but my mind was empty, adrift. I realized I had lost too much, not just money or time, but myself, my very identity and worth. I no longer recognized the Ryan of old, the ambitious, confident, and vocal man. I was just a shadow of unrecognized sacrifice, a worthless individual in the eyes of my own partner. The feeling of being trapped, suffocated, gradually became a physical pain, a pressure on my chest that made it hard to breathe. I decided I had to have one last frank conversation with Emily. I had mentally prepared for a big argument, for tears, for outright rejection, but I knew I had to do it. This was the last chance to save everything or to find liberation for both of us. The next morning, I waited for Emily to finish making coffee, and I sat across from her at the dining table where we had once dreamed of happy breakfast together, where Noah's laughter had once echoed. "Emily, I began my voice low and firm, though my heart was trembling hoarse, as if I was uttering a forbidden truth I had suppressed for so long, the one I feared facing most. I've been thinking a lot, not just for a day, but for months through sleepless nights. I know you also have your own struggles taking care of Noah at home. I'm not demanding blind gratitude. I'm not denying what you've done. But I need respect. I need recognition for what I'm doing, for the pressures I'm shouldering for this family. I need to have a voice in joint decisions, especially those related to finances, which I'm solely responsible for. I need to feel like I'm a part of this family, a true pillar, not just someone who earns money and hands it over as an obligation. I need you to see me not just husband, but Ryan, a person with dreams, fears, and his own limitations. I want to be a man of value with character, not just a walking wallet. Emily looked up, her eyes gazing at me as if I were a stranger, someone who had just uttered incomprehensible words. There was a hint of surprise, a touch of confusion, and then a chilling indifference, an apathy I had never seen before. She didn't interrupt me, didn't argue. She just remained silent, a terrifying silence heavier than any reproach. There was no apology, no understanding, no glimmer of hope that she would change or at least think about what I had just said. She simply stood up, carried her coffee cup to the living room, and turned on the TV, its sound drowning out all thoughts as if my words were just a fleeting breeze, weightless, untouched by her. She chose to reject me with silence by dismissing the words from my heart. Words accumulated from so many restless nights, so much lingering pain. In that moment, I knew our marriage was completely over. My heart was shattered, but there was also a strange sense of relief, as if a huge burden had just been lifted from my long, strained shoulders. A month later, I was the one who signed the divorce papers. Not because I stopped loving Emily. The love was still there, but it had been eroded by a lack of respect, by indifference, by incessant expectations, and by inequality in the relationship. I didn't want to teach my son Noah that a decent man, a responsible father, is someone who is trampled upon, turned into an invisible money printing machine, just because he silently bears all the financial burdens. I wanted Noah to grow up knowing that a person's worth is not only in their ability to earn money, but also in their character, in the respect they have for themselves and for others. I didn't want my child to see a soulless father, a man who had lost himself, a man who had accepted humiliation to maintain a facade of a perfect family. I left the home I had poured my life into building, carrying a suitcase of clothes and a heavy heart yet full of determination. That was the moment I found myself again, found the respect I deserved, even if it cost me a marriage. That was the final secret revealed. The decision to divorce was not an abandonment of love, but an act of self-preservation and the protection of the values I wanted to pass on to my son. It was the realization that sacrifice without respect and recognition is no different from self-destruction, from stripping away one's own dignity. I had to choose between an empty marriage where I was just a shadow and rediscovering myself so I could become a better role model, a truly valuable father in my son's eyes. Life after divorce was not easy. I had to face new challenges, from living alone and taking care of myself to adjusting my life to spend quality time with Noah under our co-parenting agreement. I moved to a smaller apartment closer to work to save commuting time and make it easier to pick up Noah after work. I learned to cook for myself, clean for myself, and confront the empty spaces I had previously filled by earning money and hoping for a complete family. I also had to face judgment from those who didn't understand, those who only saw my divorce, but not the lingering pain I had experienced, not the mental exhaustion I had endured. He's a man, why did he divorce? He must not have been able to provide for his wife and child. Men should be able to endure. Those words still echoed in my ears, but now they no longer carried the same weight. I had found peace within myself, freedom in my thoughts, and most importantly, I had rediscovered self-respect. Emily and I still co-parent Noah according to our legal agreement. Although no longer married, we strive to create a stable and loving environment for our child. Emily gradually realized that I also made important contributions, not only financially, but also in making parenting decisions, in experiencing and growing with our child. She also had to face new pressures managing her own finances and personal life, and perhaps that helped her understand to some extent the burden I had once carried, realizing that a man bearing everything isn't a given. Noah still loves both his father and mother, and he is growing up with a more comprehensive view of the roles of both genders in a family, a healthier perspective on sharing respect, and the value of sacrifice from both sides. If you are the sole breadwinner in your home, silently bearing all the financial burdens from big bills to small daily expenses, but feel you are being made invisible, criticized, stripped of your voice, or treated like a walking wallet, a mere tool, don't let others make you believe you are invisible. You have value not just because you pay the bills, not just because you bring money home, but because you are sacrificing your health, time, youth, and dreams so others can be safe, live comfortably, and pursue what they want. You are giving everything you have silently but incredibly powerfully. Your worth cannot be measured by the money you earn, but by the sacrifice and love you have given by your character and resilience. Recognize yourself because sometimes no one else will do it for you. And if one day the person you love no longer sees you as a human being, no longer sees your silent efforts, no longer respects your voice and your worth, even though you've tried your best to communicate, to change yourself, to hold on, to mend the cracks, if you feel like your energy is being drained, your dignity trampled upon just because of the responsibility you voluntarily took on, stop. Be brave enough to face the truth no matter how painful that truth may be, because you weren't born to be a walking wallet. You were born to be loved, to be respected, and to be yourself, a complete human being with full value. Your sacrifice is precious, but it shouldn't come at the cost of your dignity and happiness. Sometimes letting go of a relationship isn't weakness, it's not failure, but the courage to reclaim your true worth and to open a new door to happiness, to growth. I left that marriage, and I know I'm not alone. Many men are going through similar things. Seek support, speak up, and never forget your own worth, because you deserve to be respected, to be loved, and to be a complete person, not a shadow or a tool. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story touched your heart, or if you have any thoughts or feelings you'd like to share, don't hesitate to leave a comment below. Please hit the like button, share this story with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on other profound stories. Stories about life, love, and the lessons we've paid a price to learn. Your support is what motivates me to keep sharing these pieces of my life. I'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye for now.